If you crack first, Dave, it won't make you any less of a man.
I'm nowhere near cracking.
Neither am I, my friend.
Dave. And Matthew, what is it now? For God's sake, no one's smoking, okay? But nothing! You know what we need around here is an anti-whining ordinance. So just sip your sniveling little lip and haul your skinny ass out of here!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. I did my DC fandom video earlier, and I mentioned this is all we're going to talk about. I forgot there was one more big announcement at DC fandom that I needed to address. And here with me to talk about it is my good friend Gervais Dargan from Animated Concepts, also a former assistant editor at Milestone. How you doing, Gervais?
Doing good, Wes. Doing good as always. Excited to talk about this one because I think it's a really good move. Let's get to it.
It's kind of cool. Sometimes I do feel like some of the publishers listen to some of the things that we say here on the channel. One of the things that we've said is you can't magically make minority comic creators appear. Like, you have to go out there and you have to invest in communities. You have to go out there and try and develop these talents on your own. They're never just going to pop up, out of nowhere. And DC Comics has announced at DC Fandom the Milestone Initiative, which DC is looking to identify, educate, spotlight, and empower the next generation of Black and diverse creators in the comic book industry with this initiative. I think it's terrific. They're actually going to do something and put their money where their mouth is and actually go and invest in a community.
Oh no, absolutely. When you had brought it to my attention and I took a look at it, and despite some of the PR language in it, which kind of gives them cover if certain things don't work out, I think it's exactly what any publisher especially a publisher like DC or Marvel, who has the scale and you would assume the relationships to do so, this is exactly the track they should make. It's like you said, you have to be able to develop and cultivate this talent. It's something that requires a time investment where you just can't go out there and just we're hiring some guy in front of the stringy guy in the street and just taking anyone who walks up. I mean, there's been examples of that in the past, allegedly with Hanna-Barbera, where they used to do the Super Friends cartoon where they used to have guys working out of a Mexican prison, or the cartoons, if I remember the allegation correctly. But it's like you would prefer not to do that. You would prefer to have what essentially is a farm system, kind of like the minor league baseball, where you have guys who potentially have talent and you get them to a system like NXT and the WWE, and you develop this talent over time so that by the time you bring them up to the main roster, to one of the main books on DC, these guys have had some seasoning. So I think it's a great, in this case, it's sort of like what they call like public-private partnerships right now, where you have some companies, like I think there's some automobile companies that work with public schools where they actually now shut up like what we used to call shop back in the day, where they have students working on their cars and learning their systems, and the hope is they graduate from high school and can come into a full job working at the automobile company. I want to say GM or someone along those lines were doing that, but I think it's the same idea. This is especially the partnership with the Joe Kubert School. It just makes sense on so many levels to have an application process, identify potential talent, get them, have them come out. I think they're supposed to come out a week for DC first or something like that, just to kind of do sort of an orientation or an indoctrination, if you will. I got a problem with either one of those words. And then basically get themselves in the Joe Kubert School. And this is just basically, in a very formal way, doing what editors are expected to do anyway, which is to identify sources of talent and to basically get them on board and start those working relationships. So kudos to Milestone, kudos to DC for listening, and I hope we'll see some real superstars of tomorrow in the next 3 to 5 years. Yeah.
Now, this is similar to DC Comics Writers Workshop, which used to be funded by Scott Snyder. We saw a lot of creators come out of there. I think maybe Joshua Williamson was one of the initial people. I know Max Visaggio, Philip Kennedy Johnson. So there's been levels of success regarding the creators that have come out of there. There's been more. Those are just a few examples. And they are taking applications until November 14th on the milestone.dcuniverse.com website. So if you want to go in there and put your application in, that's the date to do it. And like you said, they get a 1-week in-person training summit at DC's Burbank office from February 14th to February 18th. So they can make connections, create community, and begin an immersive course to help hone creative and better understand the comic book industry. And then that's followed by an online virtual course with the Kubert School to hone their storytelling skills and become part of the next wave of great comic book writers and artists. this is a fantastic opportunity and is going to give them a real opportunity to go out there, identify some talent, bring them in, see if they got the goods, give them a few tools and see what they do with it. And typically when they did the writer's workshop, when they were done, I think I also had an artist workshop, they would do like an anthology, and they would kind of pair them up, and they would get to write a bunch of short stories and stuff like that and actually get published. And it says that DC is also, after the course, is promising to remain in contact and then help them find assignments and other work within the comic industry as they, develop their skills.
Yeah, and then that's where the proof in the and to me, when I was reading what they basically laid out in terms of the press release, that'll be the proof in the pudding to see, exactly how far and how diligent DC and Milestone would be in maintaining those relationships. I also would be interested as more information comes out of what I can find out about it. Are they paying for the flight to travel out to the 1 week program? Are they covering the cost of the Qubit virtual program, or are they requiring the creators to do that? So in a sense, it's nice to have that framework, to have that program structure. In terms of actually investing in that talent, how much is DC and or Milestone going to financially invest in that talent moving forward? So it'll be interesting to see that part. To me, I'd be a lot more impressed with it if it turns out they're going to cover the cost of that. But I think it's definitely the right idea. It's something that I'm trying to work with at least one school right now here in Chicago to kind of develop that same kind of relationship where hopefully if things go well, some of their second or third year students will give them the opportunity to work on some of the projects we're putting out. And I think it's the best way to do it. It's you have a group of creators that want to be in the business. And it's a great way hopefully for you to find those diamonds in the rough, and to give them an opportunity to not only learn how to do their craft, but to hopefully get paid for it as well. So I people can say what they want to, and I agree with them on some things about the creative output of Milestone so far. But I think in a lot of ways, I think there's a lot of thought that's gone into the whole Milestone project. That while it may not have always executed probably to the best, I think at least it shows they were at least thinking the right way about what's going on. And this is another example of that. I think it's a great idea. It's the right move. And Marvel should be doing it if they're not, some more formalized version of it. And I would even say, Image is a different animal. So, they wouldn't be necessarily the same expectation. And Image, I guess it tends to be more established professionals going there for sort of that either that second leg of their career or a side hustle, if you will. But I was, like Boom and some other ones, Boom and IDW, if they aren't doing the same thing on some level, they'd be fools not to do so. But I think it's a great, way to lead.
Yeah, I think it's a cool thing. My assumption is that the Kubert schools will definitely be covered by DC, and then they're probably going to put you up, for that summit out there in Burbank at their campus. That's my assumption. Obviously, they didn't actually roll out those details, but that's the kind of the way I read it personally. But I think it's cool because it's easy to go out there and pay lip service to all these ideas. Like, yes, we need more minority creators. We need more, a more diverse creator pool within DC Comics or just the industry at large. It's something else to actually go out there and put your money where your mouth is. Go out there and actually put some, actual action behind what you're saying. So too many people are about lip service and far less people are about actual action. So all I can do is say, congratulations to DC Comics. Hopefully they put together a stellar lineup of creators. And what I really hope is involved with this, and it's certainly not mentioned in here, although I guess it's touched on a little bit, is there needs to be some type of, I would almost say, formal mentorship program. Find a mentor that fits the needs and maybe the personality of the creator, and really help them develop and be there as not like an editor or anything, but somebody that they can reach out to maybe once a week, maybe once a month, say, hey, these are the things the opportunities I have, what's looking right for me, or these are some of the roadblocks that I'm seeing, how can I get around them and progress within the industry? Because mentorship is so important, especially on a little niche community industry like this, to where the skill sets are so specialized and the experiences are so far out of the norm that most people are going to have. You really need somebody to help you kind of guide you through all these issues that you're going to have.
Oh no, you're exactly right, Wes. We had talked about this in one of our podcasts before, where we basically find out like pretty much the average career span of a comic artist is 1 year or less. So what that means is that there's a lot going on in those first 12 months where people, for one reason or another, just can't end up not staying in the industry. So mentorship becomes extremely important. I mean, there's a little bit of a sentimental bone for me in this program because it very much reminds me of when I first got involved with Milestone. And what that was, it was basically a little classified ad in the back of the letters page. I believe it was icon number 2, where they were basically saying they were looking for people for the internship program. And having responded to that and gone down there, it's like that was one of the things I enjoyed about the Milestone community. I'll say this without a doubt. I learned so much from the other people who were pretty much informal mentors, from their own life experiences, work experiences, their creative philosophies, that really, even when things crashed in the 90s, I felt like equipped to be able to work in the industry, whether if I wanted to enter the industry at a later point or just to continue to move on by myself as I'm doing now. It's like there is no, it is priceless. If you have the right kind of mentor with the right kind of intentions and seeking the right kind of outcomes, it's priceless having a mentor. So now for some of I think a critical audience, that may be one of the Achilles heels of this program is if you're not a big fan of DC's current creative philosophy, that you don't have this program where you're basically creating clones of something that many feel they're already doing wrong. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this will be about are they bringing people in to basically fall into a DC or Milestone house style, or are they actually looking to basically teach creators who have their own voices how to give them the craft to basically be successful commercially in expressing those creative voices. So this is going to be something to watch. It's going to be something to watch. And like you said, I agree. Congratulations to DC and both the Milestone for being this forward thinking. And I hope that, they do hit that mentorship piece, because it is important. And that's that last part they were talking about in terms of the staying connected part. Mm-hmm. It's like if they really are, if they really show a real sense of fidelity to that, then I think this is something where they'll have that next generation of superstars lined up and waiting for them, and superstars that'll connect with the general public in a great way. That it's gonna be some upfront investment now, which is gonna pay many dividends later on down the line for decades to come. So it's the right move.
Once you get something that's like this moving along and humming, mm-hmm. you don't have to invest anymore, because people go back to their communities. They kind of become someone to look up to, role models or whatever, and people start striving for that kind of success if they're able to achieve it.
Yep. Oh no, absolutely. And that's, I think the best example you can look at that is, until the little brand change of late was the WWE NXT. And and there was maybe one flaw with that NXT program was that you literally didn't have like the on the road mentorship that you would have had back in the days of what they used to call the territories, but definitely in the sense of like, there were guys, when you would listen to them talk about it, they would say, when they were doing the independent wrestling scene, it's like a lot of it seemed like to be about playing to that particularly local crowd and just learning how to work and do moves in the ring. But it's like when they got to the NXT program, then they realized how much they had to be mindful of where the cameras were, or who's this particular person, the production crew, how they play into that role. How you have to establish some kind of relationship or rapport with the announcers who are going to be working in your match. There were all these very subtle things that it's like, you can get to the 90% of, this is how I take a bump, this is how I take a fall, this is how I do a hit or a kick, this is how I wrestle without injuring somebody. But it's that other 10% that's going to get you to basically being a star, where it's just like really knowing these other very subtle aspects of your craft. That is what I think was the success of the NXT program when Triple H, his ring name, proposed it, is they realized that if you want to get people to be successful in the system, you have to expose them to that system before you put them up in the big time. So, it's what can I say? You criticize when it's appropriate to criticize somebody, but you give credit where credit is due. And right now, credit to DC and Milestone for coming up with this, because it is much needed. Yeah.
Now that wasn't the only Milestone info we got out of the Fandome. I also saw that they're launching Blood Syndicate. That's one of the 4 real properties from Milestone that we were wondering where it was. It was MIA on this Milestone relaunch. Where's Blood Syndicate? Where's the team book? Finally coming out.
Second only to Icon. one of my favorite books, with all the controversy that went along with it. I still to this day remember one of my friends when they announced the initial lineup of books was so pissed that day. He's like, "We're gonna do a team book. The team book has got to be a gang." I was like, "Yeah." To be fair, at least on the East Coast anyway, you didn't really have gangs. I don't even know if you have like cliques like you have in Chicago. You maybe had stick-up crews, and that was still kind of like 80s. So you just had people who was just, if you had criminals, you just had criminals, and they just kind of hung out together. I don't know what they called themselves. But the thing was that Blood Syndicate, hands down, was one of the best team books written at the time. If you have not read the original run of Blood Syndicate, do yourself a favor and pick it up. The work that Dwayne and then eventually Ivan Velez Jr. do in that book in terms of the team dynamics, the characterizations, the stories that are written. Even one of my favorites is the crossover between Blood Syndicate and Icon, and what Rocket basically tries to focus the Blood Syndicate on what they really should be about. That to me is like primo milestone. And it'll be interesting again to see what their take on it will be. But it's like, yeah, if anything, if they were like trying to launch a second wave and they wanted to like anchor that with something, yeah, Blood Syndicate is the book to do it with, because it was easily, I'm talking about everybody from across every ethnic group, across every fan base. They definitely held up Blood Syndicate as one of the best books out there at the time. And you also have the art of Trevor Vaughn, James Fry in the beginning, and then Chris Cross took over after that. It's just a great book all around. So we'll see. We'll be interested to see what they do with it this time around.
You got your wish. Blood Syndicate's coming back, and
That's right.
It feels like, I don't know if DC were listening to us, but it's certainly they're doing exactly what we have talked about in the past. They're going out there and investing in community. These creators aren't just going to happen, out of nowhere. You got to go out there. You got to invest if you want to get more perspectives, more diversity as far as your creative pool. And I think DC Comics with the Milestone Initiative are doing a great job. I want to say thank you very much to Gervain for joining me today. You have any final words, Gervain?
No, all I'm saying is that, like I said, it's we all have our varied opinions of Milestone at this point, but I as always, I continue to wish them nothing but success. It's like, it is a brand. It's a brand that some of us are very fond of, and we would like to see it do well. But like I said, this is very evocative and very much an honor of what I know for a fact that a lot of those creators themselves, I'm talking about Dennis Cowan, and many of the founders were involved with. These are the same kind of experiences they had in terms of coming up through a system and having been mentored by other professionals in the industry. So it's nice to see them carrying on that tradition and doing it in such a very public and formal way. So as I said before, I tip my hat to them and congratulations. I wish them nothing but success with it. Yep.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.